What was the name of your little lawn mowing company?
The Lawn Wranglers?
This old town been home long as I remember. This town gonna be here long after I'm gone. East side, west side, people don't surrender.
Welcome to Wrangler Roundup, episode 16. Ed Sutter is our special guest tonight. Welcome, Ed. And our co-host is?
Hi, I'm Riza Durbin.
Welcome, Riza.
Thank you, Larry.
Ed is a local entrepreneur, runner, and race director. Ed was born and bred in Akron's West Hill neighborhood and is a proud graduate of St. Vincent St. Mary High School. Go Irish. He's an accomplished marathoner, having qualified and run multiple Boston marathons. In recent years, Ed has used his expertise and connections in the running community to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in the fight against cancer. I might add that Ed puts on the biggest, most festive post-race party in Akron aside from the Akron Marathon. Welcome to our show, Ed.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry, and thank you so much for all you do.
Thanks.
You know, the Wranglers, probably the best group that's come out in Akron in a long time.
Well, thank you, Ed.
Come, Ed.
We're kind of clownish and kind of
I love it.
screwballs, but we enjoy
love
it,
it.
and we love running. So, Ed, that's why I love chatting with you, because you got so many stories and you've been around, and it seems like you know everyone. But let's go back to the roots. Let's talk about high school, because St. Vincent St. Mary, I think when you were there, now correct me if I'm wrong, they did not have a track and field or a cross-country team back then, did they?
No, it wasn't. It's certainly come along in recent decades, but at that point in time, it was more all about what it still kind of is, but, you know, it was all about football, basketball, wrestling was big.
So then you did not run in high school?
No, I was definitely an athlete in high school, grade school, high school, but running was the last thing on my mind. I mean, as a matter of fact, I hated it. I loathed when we had to run for wrestling. I was a wrestler was the biggest aspect of my life. I wrestled for 7 years competitively, and I was so competitive that by the time I was in junior or sophomore, there was a state champion ahead of me. And they made you lose weight back in those days. You know, you could lose weight. You know, you'd be better off down in this weight class. It was nowadays it's kind of out. I mean, not a thing they do. But back in those days, you lost weight. You know, and I went down from I was a kid. You know, and I went from like 132 pounds to get down to 112 to wrestle. And I started as a freshman. I was a champion in grade school 3 times. And then the sophomore year, I started also working. That's crucial. I started working. And my sophomore year, I had started getting really into work, and there was a senior ahead of me that was a state champion. So they made me go on, the JV team, which, and they made me lose the weight. That's the thing. They wanted me to stay down on weight in case that somebody got injured. And I started working, and I said, you know what? Sounds like I'm a worker from this time on in my life. Running wasn't even in my vocabulary.
So, how did you get into running?
Running, well, it's a bittersweet story in some ways, but a great story in the end game. I turned 40. I was turning 40, and you're at that point in your life where you're starting to think about life. And a close friend of mine committed suicide, and he hit me really hard. And at that point in time, I started to reevaluate life a little bit, so to speak. And I also noticed that not gross, beer was starting, I drank a little beer and I'm like, I got a little pouch here. I got to do something. I got to do something for my life. I'm getting older. So I just took up running. I thought, you know what, running is something anybody can do. So I started getting into running. So, but again, at that point in time, it was simply something, it was exercise, it was fitness, it was something to get healthy. It wasn't about running Boston or even running a marathon for that matter. The first race I ran was a 10K, official race, was a 10K, the Cleveland Cleveland 10K, and I'll never forget that day, like I'll never forget my first marathon. Because I said, what the hell am I doing here? I just wanted it to be over at like mile 4 or 5. I was like, what? And I crossed that finish line for my first 10K, and just kind of one thing led to another as far as, getting, it's one of those things, even though I really don't think I felt it at the 10K, but for some reason, something inside of my head said, you know what, I kind of like this running thing, I'm gonna keep trying it and doing it. And then about, I don't know, a year later or so, as time went on, I started thinking I wanted to run a marathon,
And you ended up qualifying and competing in Boston a few times. So can you kind of talk to us about like the process, how you went from a casual runner, here you're at your first 10K, and then all of a sudden you're not just running a marathon, but you're running a pretty good pace to qualify for Boston. Like what's the process? How did you make that transition?
Again, as I first said, running, I hated it as a kid, and I eventually turned to it as, a man at 40, and I'm competitive. There's no doubt about that. No matter what I do in life, I'm pretty competitive. And okay, I'm gonna run a marathon. So I trained for Akron, my first marathon. Cleveland. Back up 2 seconds. Cleveland. And that day, we'll fast forward to Akron in a second, but that day of Cleveland, I ended up running into some guys at Caldwell Falls Natatorium. And that's probably what really changed my running, is I met people. Because as I trained for Cleveland, for the most part, I didn't run with anybody. I ran solo. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah, that's a grind.
Yeah, I mean, I was going out for 16, 17, 18 milers, and not really looking forward to it, especially being by yourself all that time, other than those buds in your ear. And so I ran Cleveland, and this is kind of a funny story. I ran Cleveland. Number one, I ran into, at the end of that training session, I did run into these people from the natatorium that I started running with. And so I ran into one of the guys at like mile 22 or 23. I said, I'm not going to make it. And I can't do this. This is crazy. I said, what the hell did I get myself into? He goes, you got it, just a couple more miles. And that struck me a lot. It struck me so much that the community of runners, and I was already starting to see that, and that's a big part of what really got me into running, was the community, the running community, all right? And so he encouraged me, and then a couple other people I ran into really wanted to make sure I got to that finish line. And I was approaching the 4-hour mark. And then this is kind of funny because as I was approaching the 4 hour, I'm just some guy from Monroe Falls, Ed Sutter, who do they know in Cleveland, and as I'm approaching the 4 hour, the end, the finish line, all of a sudden the crowd went berserk. and they said, and here comes Ed Sutter. And I'm like, what? And they said, Ed, it looks like he's gonna do it. Yes, Ed Sutter is our last runner in under 4 hours, 3:59:59. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
That is,
yeah.
And
I didn't understand why the heck they were going crazy, because they started and I was much farther back, so that was cool. But as far as Boston goes, and
that was your first. The one
that was Cleveland.
That was your first.
Yeah, it was a 3. And so it's kind of funny because you'll appreciate this. Runners will appreciate this. The idea of going from a 3:59:59 to, at that point in time, my qualifying time, the qualifying time for my age group in Boston was 3:20. All right, so you're going to try to go from it. I actually had no intention of, training or qualifying for the Boston Marathon, right? But so then I decided, I got involved with Vince Rusi from Vertical Runner and some of his running groups. All right, at that time, some of these running groups that are around now, weren't around.
Right.
Phillips Flyers I met eventually. All right, but anyhow. But Vince was where I was buying my shoes, and he said, so I went out with a training run with him, and it was for beginner marathoners, right? And we ran it, and it was like, I think a 16 mile or something like that, but it was mostly, and I was a beginning marathoner, but apparently I was doing okay. And so I was with Vince the whole time in the front of like 20 people, you know, and then towards the end of the run, it was me and Vince and the pack behind us, you know, and Vince said, "You want to kick in that last mile?" And I'm like, "Sure, I feel great." And so we kicked in that last mile, and I got to the end of that, and that was my first group run. That was my first group run. And I'm like, wow, this is great, man. You're running with all these people. You got any more of these things? You know? And he says, yeah, there's a group that meets on Saturdays at 8 o'clock at Boland's. So I go out the next Sunday, and I go to Boland's at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I get out of my car, and I look around, and I look back of all these cars, 50K, 100K, you know, Buckeye 50, you know, all these things. I get out, I don't know anybody, you know, and I'm looking around at these guys and think, oh, okay, I'm not so sure about this, but I'll try, I'll give it a whirl, you know.
That can be intimidating.
There was an Asian guy there. We'll get to that in 2 seconds. There was an Asian guy there, and so we did this run. It was up O'Neill Road, which runners out there know that's one hell of a road to run up, you know. And we got to the top. All I said to myself all along is, if I can just see him, I'm okay. If I can just see him, I'm doing okay. Somehow I got myself through that run, and it wasn't easy. And I got to the end of it, and I called Vince literally when I got into my car. I said, "Who the hell were those guys?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, that's our 8 o'clock Boland's group." He says, "Was there an Asian guy there?" He goes, "Yeah, that's Cam Lee." Shit, you know Cam Lee? I'm like, "Yeah, he just took third place in Cleveland." I go, "Oh." So that was my first lesson about how to train, you know. And the other thing that came out of that run was that I realized, going back home, and I said to my wife at the time, and I said, you know, as I extrapolate these times, I'm actually running a pace that I could qualify for the Boston Marathon. I said, I never set out to do that. I said, so I just kept going. And in the meantime, I was running with those guys from the Nat. And I met another young guy, Mike Amonette. He was younger, 10 years younger than me. Mike Amonette, great runner. He's run every Akron but one because he was injured. And we ran together for multiple years. And the one piece of advice I could give to anybody, and I've told multiple people, is if you're just not quite there, but your thing is Boston, run with people faster than you. You know, run with people younger than you. Run with somebody that you want to look up to. If I can get them, if I can keep up with them, maybe there's a shot. So then I went out and ran Akron that fall, and I ran a 3:18. So I chopped 42 minutes off my first to second marathon, and I qualified for the Boston Marathon.
How old were you at that point?
Well, it was 2006, so that was 17 years ago, so I guess I'm going to give up my age now. So that was about 40, I was 43 years old at the
I was
time.
going to guess 42, 43, because he said he started at 40.
Yeah,
Right.
so second marathon, qualified for Boston
Jeez, on an Akron course.
on Akron's course.
I'm too much of a coward to run the Akron Marathon. I will not run that
You haven't
marathon.
run it?
I've never run it.
That's
I've been on several relays for Akron, but I will not run it.
That's my worst marathon, actually, Akron.
Yeah, so kudos to you. That's
You know what's funny is, and that's true, but I love Akron. I love the Akron Marathon. I've been involved in the Akron Marathon through my business. I've always been a big cheerleader of the Akron Marathon. And so I've always loved the course. I've run it, I think 8 or 9 times, right? And every time I've run it, I've qualified for Boston.
how many times have you qualified, Ed?
I've run 19 marathons. I think I qualified 13 or 14 times.
Wow.
And how many times have you run the Boston?
I run 4 Bostons.
It gets pricey.
Yeah, I mean, there's people like Joey Phillips, and
We're gonna
Joey's
get Joey
there every
on.
year.
I want to get him on here
there's
and
people
talk
like
about
Joey
experience.
Phillips, and of course the Goodells, and they're all buddies, and God rest Mark's soul. But you know, that have, I don't even know how Joey's he's volunteering. I mean, but that's Joey's life, and it is expensive.
But it's a once in a lifetime. I mean, you know, and I've done it twice, but man, just come around that turn and talk about people yelling. And you can't even hear, and no matter how you feel, that last stretch, it's just, this is worth it. It was worth every
There's
cent.
absolutely
It was worth
nothing
every
like
stride.
There's
Yeah.
nothing like the experience of the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people talk about New York, and to be honest with you, I really would have liked to, and maybe one day will, run New York. I've run Chicago twice. Chicago is an amazing marathon. You know, it's actually more people than
I
than
looked
Boston.
into it. Yeah, I was
You
going
know,
to
I
do
mean,
it, but it was $240. Man,
1.5 million people on the
Yeah.
streets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a much bigger city. right? But Boston, there's just something about it. From the minute you get off the plane, or if you drive there, there's just a feeling in the air, the expo, everything about it. And I've run in crap weather every time, basically, and including the worst weather year ever,
Oh, that was 2018.
2018.
Was that your last Boston?
Yeah, yes, yeah, 2018. I mean, I got stuck on, I didn't really, again, never had really too many necessarily goals. But once you get to 4, it's kind of like, well, I wouldn't mind getting 5. Hasn't happened yet. So, I'm not currently actually running right now, so.
Are there other area groups or individual runners that you run with when training and running competitively?
Phillips Flyers, you know, and Joey's, you know, the one thing I will say about the Akron running community is that it's been blessed with so many wonderful running groups, you know, from the Canal Rats to, you know, Portage Lakes Running Club to Medina's Club to now the Wranglers and you know, and then there's groups that help people like Running to Be Well. And, you know, Keith does a great job with all that.
Yep.
So there's just, I mean, I think our area is really, really blessed. If anybody's new out there and looking to get into running, and that's something I promoted a lot over social, you know, over time on social media, you know, as far as getting into running and running with running groups. It's a game changer, you know, as far as your, number one, enjoying running, you know, in community, making friends. I don't think I've ever seen a community of sport that is more encouraging than the running community.
Yeah, we have a friend, Terry Colin. She's doing some work in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I ran with her a week ago, and she said, Larry, there's no running groups here, none. And Erie's a decent-sized city at the Erie Marathon there, and so we're very, yeah. So we're very fortunate. You're exactly right. And I know you mentioned you weren't running, and we've chatted about this before, so you got injuries, I know, that have kind of sidelined you.
It's way too early in my life, and I look at people, and to be honest with you, they're inspirations. The people that, as you get a little older, that are still continuing on and you know, running that good fight. Steve Haler is a great example of that. So very much involved over the years in SARC, some of the athletic running community. Steve is definitely a huge cheerleader of running, and you know, still to this day, he's got so many goals. You know, and you know, he's you know, a progressed runner, shall we say? What's the nice way of saying it? An older runner. You know, Terry Fox and some of the other folks that are out there that are running still to this day, and some of them are very competitive. Unfortunately for me, actually, when I ran my last marathon, which is the last marathon before COVID hit.
New Orleans, right?
It was New Orleans. Oh. And I don't know, it was related, but I felt like I was really, really in great shape. I felt like I was going to qualify for Boston that day and get that number 5. And I was running with my daughter on the same course. I just, you know, it was a warm day, but not that bad. But it got up to in the low 70s. Nothing but sunshine. So, and it was a lot of direct sunlight. But anyhow, I hit that proverbial wall earlier than I have ever hit it in any of my marathons, and I hit it about mile 20, and which was mind-boggling to me. And so I walked, which I've never done. I've walked, but I've never walked and never started back up running. I couldn't. My feet were absolutely killing me. I could barely walk. It was the most agonizing 6 miles of my life as far as my running career goes. And I walked the whole 6 miles and spent a lot of time thinking about life. And then my daughter was behind me. She's done a great job, Devin, and she's run, I think, 7 marathons now, 4 of them with me, which is the greatest thrill in your life, is to cross a finish line with your daughter's hand, to get hand in hand. I highly recommend it, dads, all right, or your son for that matter, you know, your sons. But we were in Columbus. But anyhow, so I thought to myself as I was walking and in pain, that, wow, I've come full circle. Devin's gonna catch up to me and beat me in a marathon, you know? She caught up to me at mile number 25, and I was in a little bit of a mess mentally and whatever. And I said, go, you're gonna beat your dad. We've come full circle. She said, Dad, I'm not going anywhere. We're finishing this together. I didn't connect anything at that point in time, but my feet were in bad shape. All right, and then I continued to run. COVID hit right shortly after that. I ran actually with the PLX group. They had what do you call it? A group run for the marathon.
That's right.
I think it was the marathon day actually.
Yeah.
I think. All right, and I ran that day, and I actually I ran a half. And I beat my time from the previous year where I got a second place age group award at Akron. And so I went through it, but during that training, my feet were giving me problems. But I was still running pretty strong. But then when we went through the winter of 2020 into the spring of 2021, I was having a ton of issues with my feet. And so finally I sought some, medical advice and help and saw some doctors, and I have polyneuropathy in the feet, and it's one of those things. It's not something that you can just cure. There's not a pill to take for it. There's different ways they address it, and there's also a ton of causes. There's no diabetes is one of the leading causes, but I don't have diabetes. I'm actually one of the things is they took all these medical tests. A bunch of them, pricked me, did everything. It's 9 tests, different tests that basically test my whole body and my health. And every test came back like I was perfectly healthy. So they were having a real tough time pinpointing it. Meantime, I've done multiple. I've done the shock treatments. I've done.
That's gotta be frustrating.
A ton of stuff, but it's very painful. It's one of those things where I'm going to have to make a decision. If I'm going to continue with my running, which I hope to. Just maybe, I don't know, biting the bullet or something. There's creams. I've tried different things, but the one thing about polyneuropathy, and I think it was Paul Romanek gave me a name of somebody that has also suffered from it, that somehow found some relief, a big-time runner. But the one unfortunate thing, especially as you get a little older, is it's not reversible. It's nerve damage. Once your nerves are damaged, and running can be part of it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
You are the race director of the Four Leaf Clover Run. Can you talk about the genesis of the event?
Four Leaf Clover Run. We got to my heart and soul, my baby. Four Leaf Clover Run. I never meant to be or set out to be a Boston marathoner. I didn't set out to be a race director or do a race. But one thing I have done a ton of over time is a ton of events, a ton of, I've orchestrated thousands of events over time, right? And so I had 2 sisters that were battling cancer, Michelle and Marianne. And at the time I was doing my Eddie's thing, over here in the other part of Main Street. And I also did spring break for 8 years. And Michelle was in her 5th year battling her cancer, and as I was getting ready to literally to go down to spring break that day, I was in the offices of the Rubber Ducks because Eddie's was in the Rubber Duck Stadium at that point, and I was literally getting ready to sign the contract. I ran in there real quick just to sign the contract for that year, and I get an email. Check them out, you get an email alert. I look at my email, and my sister had informed us, our family, privately, that she had decided to put her hands in the hands of hospice. And so I was stuck with a very, very, very difficult decision on the spot in the moment of time. One of life's moments where, what do I do now? I was heading to do business for 6 weeks of time in Florida, and it was a very lucrative piece of business. At that point, we'd been there almost a decade. And so I called one of my sisters and I said, what am I supposed to do? She goes, Ed, Panama City is too important to you. Michelle could live, a month, 2 months, whatever. You don't know. You got to go. So I went down and got things going for that year at Panama City Beach spring break, and we got it all set up. It takes like a week to get the whole thing ready to go, and all your vendors and all that kind of licenses. And so it was Monday before as we were opening up. And I got a phone call from my sister, Beth, and my sister Michelle had passed. So now I was stuck with a situation where all of a sudden I had to figure all these things out, how to go from Panama, get back home. Obviously, I had to go home to be with my family. And so, you know, of course, I figured all that out. As I was flying home, I had obviously time to think, and I thought, Michelle I just lost. Mary Ann is in there, at that point in time, she was in her 6th year battling colon cancer, my other sister. And so I was a runner. I knew how to do things. I knew how to throw parties. I knew how to throw events. I said, I need to do a race. And there was talk, we had talked on some group runs. We need to do a run through the hood, you know, the St. V hood, you know. So that came to my brain, you know. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a race. And we're going to raise money for cancer, you know. And that's how the Four Leaf Clover Run was born. The other awesome aspect of that was the fact that I knew so many people. You know, I knew the Joey Phillipses of the world, the Jim Cheneys of the world, the Akron Marathon people, and everybody in the early stages of the genesis of this race were so willing to do what they could to, you know, within the extent of their time to help us get out, to launch it. But it was grassroots. We had no money. We started with zero in the bank account, you know, and but I had a great group of people. You know, Joey got very involved. Jim Cheney's been very involved and a wonderful godsend since day one. And we had a whole committee of people involved in the race. And I had another close friend, the Sullivans, that lost a son at 30. To cancer also, so I you know, St. V. It's not a St. V race, but it was obviously a lot of St. V people involved, and so I came up with a name, and then the next big question was, okay, we're going to have a race, we're going to raise money. What do we do with the money? You know, because you know I wasn't really experienced that necessarily. I've raised money for causes before, but not something I started. You know, plus there was the whole idea of, you know, forming a 501c3, you know, an actual, you know, state of Ohio nonprofit. It's not as simple as just, hey, I want to do a race. Right. You know, so we sat around as a group, and this is important. We sat around as a group and to decide what are we going to do with whatever money we raise. You know, and we decided to keep it all local. We wanted nothing to do with any national organizations, you know, where people were getting paid salaries to run these, you know, these organizations. We wanted, you know, 100% nonprofits. So we did some research and we found 2 of the leading nonprofit organizations in the Akron community, Project Ed Bear and the Stephen A. Camino Jr. Family Cancer Foundation. And the nice thing about this was that we were able to make a difference for kids and adults. So we had all the bases covered. Project Ed Bear is very kid-oriented, Children's Hospital, all kinds of kids programs. Stephen A. Camino Jr. Family Cancer Foundation is more adult-oriented, and they are basically there to help you with your everyday needs, whatever it is. You can't pay the gas bill, you can't pay the rent, car payments, groceries. They dole out up in excess of $250,000 a year and have donated like $25 million over the course of time. Both those organizations have also stood the test of time and have been around for 25 years. And so we kept it all local. And that's how we started at the beginning with those 2 organizations. The first year we made a little bit of money. We made $3,000. We gave $1,000 to each of the organizations. And we kept a little bit of money to start up the next year's race. Next year, yeah. And I went to Susan, and I was, you know, remember the competitive ed? My spirit was a little bit broken. I'm like, I only raised $1,000. Because Ed, nobody makes the money the first year of the launch of nonprofit. No. You made money. Yeah. So we kind of went from there. You know? Yeah.
So, I mean, by the way, that's awesome. I mean, I just, you know, the fact that you took that on and every year it's grown. And as a runner, and Reza knows this, there's tons of local road races in the summer. What sets the Four Leaf Clover Run apart from the rest in terms of a race, an event?
Well, I mean, and it's a great question, number one, but the other thing I wanted to do when I started the Four Leaf Clover Run was I wanted it to be something that people remembered. I didn't want it to be a 5K where, you know, even though every 5K serves a great purpose, but for me, I wanted to create, number one, I was trying to raise money for cancer, you know, so I wanted to have as big as impact as possible. That's the competitive part of me, all right? And I wanted to bring together and grow this thing, all right? And so I knew to do that, you wanted to leave the people with an experience, you know, not just, oh, hey, thanks a lot. Yell out 72 names. That's typically how many awards there are, and see you later, bye. You know, I wanted to have, and plus I saw how the Akron Marathon did it, and I saw some other races there. Obviously, we weren't trying to be an Akron Marathon. We were a little 4-mile race, you know, but that doesn't mean we can't do it as a, very top-notch professionally run race. You know, and so I thought, you know what? I want to have a finishers festival. I want to have a family fun run. I want to give out a lot of good stuff, which doesn't mean that we're spending money, because that's where our community partners come in. You know, whether it be Acme. I mean, I could go on and on with all the people that have helped us over the course of time. All right, so we're going to have a finish line on the 50-yard line of a very legendary football stadium. We're going to take your picture. We're going to have sponsors that do that, and then we're going to do a great family fun run around the field where LeBron James actually played football on, and then we're going to gather them all up. We're going to give out some great awards. We're going to have some fighters with us. We're going to make the award ceremony special, and then we're going to have fun. We're going to get Budweiser involved because they're St. V people, and thank God for some of my people that are my partners in that race. They're people that I've known through life, and so Budweiser is very involved. House of Rose. We're going to have beer. We're going to have a barbecue. We're going to do this on the cheap because we're going to get my food companies that I buy thousands and thousands of dollars of food off. They're going to give me the food for basically free, all right? And then we're going to have a live music concert. You know, we're going to get the people dancing. And we're not just going to have a little garage band and from the neighborhood. We're going to have good top-flight entertainment, and that comes from my background in being in the entertainment business. And so we have Disco Inferno, and there's a band that I played, that I worked with multiple times over time, and had a relationship with, and they charge a lot of money for events like this, because when you have a one-off event, it's not like a bar. They try to get as much money as they can, you know. And but for me, they do it for next to nothing, all right? And so it's an experience, you know.
It is.
And then when the people walk away, and I can't tell you how many dozens and dozens of people have pulled me aside and said, this day is just like no race that I ever do, you know?
Ed, I'm going to tell you, I mean, just running 5Ks, I mean, going to your race, and as you said, everything you just said, but afterwards, it's an experience. There's a guy in front of me who was going to run my race the week after yours, and we were in the line, you know, eating that delicious food you put out, and I said, dude, you better eat up, because next week you're getting a banana and a water for lunch. But yeah, you do it, man, and it's affordable, man. I mean, you know, you get fed, you know, you get all, and it's well organized. It's a big feel, you know, and it's just awesome.
And the other thing too that I actually am very proud of, you know, and hopefully this year, I think you're going to talk about it in a second, but hopefully this year we'll be able to make it so that, you know, maybe some of all the past winners can come back this year, because for a special year that it's going to be. And it's been a very competitive race, a very competitive race. And I'm especially on a course that not everybody feels extremely fondly of. But we've taken out some of the hills. Trust me. You can't go through Glendale and not have hills. You know, and actually in that part of Akron, you know, hey, Joey Phillips wanted us to put Cadillac Hill in the race.
Oh, Cadillac Hill! Whoa.
So I mean, to be honest with you,
I'd be bear crawling.
To be honest with you. It was more going to be kind of like, you know, we're not. This isn't about a 5-minute pace, which is actually what the course record is, 5:03. But it's about our experience, you know. So if we're going to throw Cadillac Hill in there, why not? You know, but the city turned it down because that was that's when the water project was first starting down in downtown Akron, and so.
Thank God.
But what you get as a result of that is you get to go down Glendale Hill, but then you get to go back up it.
Yeah.
So it's a competitive course. And we've had some of the best runners in the Akron and Cleveland area, for that matter, compete on that course. Eamon and
Varel.
Eamon and I forgive me. There's what the heck's his name? Two people own the course record, all right? It's 503, all right?
Hey, does Eamon have?
Eamon's one of them.
Okay, and it's not Varel.
It's not Varel. Varel came close.
Yeah.
All right, but Varel's won it. Eamon's won it. Bryce Patrick, very, very, very good quality runner from, he went to St. V and then he went on to Walsh University and accomplished runner. He's won it a couple times. We've had a great field. I think we had something like 20 sub sixes. Or no, yeah. I think it was 15 or 20 sub sixes and like 30 or 40 sub sevens in a couple of years. So hopefully we'll get that same excitement out in the course. So, and the same thing on the women's side. You know, we've had some really quality. You know, Jenny Robinson has taken the top spot a couple times, and we've had some really good women's races also.
Okay. Who is your adopted fighter for this year, Ed?
Well, I'm really glad that you guys brought up the Adopted Fighter program because, you know, we're proud of a lot of what we've accomplished as a foundation for the local cancer community. With the fact that when I set out with this thing, I didn't have any goals, to be honest with you. I just wanted to honor my sister, you know, and then what eventually became my sisters. And my sister Mary Ann, by the way, she was our first. We usually bring somebody in to start the race, somebody special, all right? And she was our first on your mark, get set, go official race starter. She walked the course in the midst of her most intense moments of her battle with colon cancer in our inaugural race in 2016. And she said, on your mark, get set, go. She'd come back to Akron because she felt it was time that year. And later she went on a cruise. She saw the Cavs championship. She had a great 2016. And then we lost her on December 31st of 2016. So two sisters, all right? But the Adopted Fighter program isn't something that was at the beginning, just like no amount of money to raise was at the beginning goals. You know, I eventually said, I want to hit 100,000. And we did. We hit 100,000 last year, all right? And so the second year, Susan Somerville, Project Ed Bear, said to me, Ed, did you ever think about adopting a fighter, you know, as part of your program, what you're doing? You know, I said, well, I don't really know how that looks. How does that look? I said, what do you do, put a SOS out for somebody fighting cancer? I mean, how do you do that? She goes, I'll help you, you know. So Susan referred to me multiple people, you know, over the first year or two that I talked to, and we, you know, see if the fit made sense for both. You know, if they were willing to accept the help because it's, you know, tough for a family and or whatever, what the person that is going through this battle. Although we've dealt with young adults, we've dealt with children, you know, young kids, and right now we're dealing with an adult this year. But the Adopted Fighter program is something I'm extremely proud of. We raised over roughly $43,000 for 5 local families. Our adopted fighters have been Cameron Fortney, Justin Sears, Dara Elena Bretzik was our 2020 adopted fighter when, of course, we had to cancel the race, which really put me in a quagmire because how do I raise money for a 3-year-old girl battling cancer without a race? We figured it out and we raised a lot of money. All right, she lost her battle at 3 years old. So experiencing that was tough. It was gut wrenching. But I held the hands. The family was really responsive to what we were trying to do for them, and they've been a huge supporter of the race to this day. And it's the Elena Bretzik Family Fun Run. We now honor Elena every race day. To get to back, and then we had Molly, the very popular Molly, Jackson. Mighty Molly. We had Jackson, who was extremely popular in 2019, young boy who's faced 2 battles with brain cancer and has come through it. All right, and Jackson he's still my buddy, all right, and his mom and Jackson are involved in the race pretty much every year, all right, and this year the running community came to me, all right, and said, Ed, there's somebody we really think that you should strongly consider for this year's adopted fighter in January 5th of this year. This young lady was faced with some pretty heartbreaking and life-changing news when she was diagnosed with AML, leukemia, and this year's adopted fighter is Sunshine Sharon Strong, as we come to know her on social media, Sharon Spaeth, as a human being. All right, Sharon is going through one heck of a battle right now. She's a runner. She's run the Four Leaf Clover Run. She's got a ton of support, a ton of people that are behind her. It was an easy decision to make, and so our 2023 adopted fighter is Sunshine Sharon Spaeth. So it's time for the running community to come together for one of our own.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree.
And we're going to a dinner for Sharon Friday, actually.
Yeah, there's a benefit dinner Friday for fundraising.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ed, that she's the adopted fighter this year. What are you most excited about for this year's Four Leaf Clover Run? Is there something that you're super stoked about?
Well, I don't know if super stoked would be the word, but this year is, I think most people know. If you don't know, then you'll learn if you watch this video. But this year is the final running of the Four Leaf Clover Run. All right.
Come on, Ed.
The number one, there is a lot of time involved.
Yeah.
Anybody that's directed a race
Yeah.
knows that. I have two businesses. Really, I have three businesses, in addition to my cancer foundation. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I really didn't have any set goals when I formed the Four Leaf Clover Foundation. Eventually, as couple years went on, I said to myself, and probably Joey or whatever, and I said, I'd like to hit 100,000. I really want to hit 100,000 races. It sounds like a good number, and we hit it. We hit it last year. The amount of work is, like I said, cumbersome. And here's the other thing too is this. And this year, I'm excited, and I've done some things that hopefully will, pique the interest to a fever pitch, and to get, our largest turnout ever, which is certainly the goal. And that is, number one, the Four Leaf Clover Run Foundation is not going away. All right, I'm not going to suddenly not try to make some sort of a difference for local cancer fighters. We do a concert every year in the fall with some wonderful people from the Barberton area, and they've been members of the Easy Street Band. They have other aspects of their band that's growing on. They now have another Southside Johnny tribute, and won't spend time, but it's a great time. You'll see it on social media. We've done it 4 years now. We raised a lot of money, all right? And who knows? We might come back in 2025 with something different. Jim and I have talked about it, but who knows? And who knows? Maybe on race day, I might say, you know what? This is too much fun. I'm not going to stop it. But at this point in time, it's definitely the finale. And for the first year ever, one of the many things that we give the runners is something I've never given the runner at our race for various reasons. A lot of people kind of know my opinion on this, but I think that any race that you across that finish line is noteworthy. I've always been that opinion that medals come in at the half marathon stage.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we're going to do a really very cool commemorative medal this year. I felt with the final running of the Four Leaf Clover Run, it's lucky sevens. It's our 7th anniversary. Should be 8, but so we've actually had 8 years that we've continued to raise money. But this is the actual 7th running of the Four Leaf Clover Run. Lucky sevens. We just came off our very successful St. Patrick's Day promotion. We're on a record pace.
You told me that the other day. That's awesome.
Right now,
Yeah.
we're about 28% ahead of 2019, the year of Jackson, and 2021, the year of Molly, which were basically neck and neck. So I always kind of say they tied. But roughly 550 runners for those 2 years. So really would be nice to get to that 600 level. So hopefully we'll have a huge year. We've always had great weather. It's maybe a tad warm, but I always kid people when they say, it's pretty warm out. I say, it's 4 miles.
Well, you can't escape it. It's in June, and
I
it's a
was
10
gonna
o'clock
say,
start, I
yes.
believe. So, yeah.
Yeah, we started at 10 o'clock only simply because I don't feel like people should be drinking before noon.
Drinking
No,
before
just kidding.
So, Ed, we're gonna be one last question before rapid fire roundup, because I think some of the questions we had you already alluded to, but I want to go back to you talked about your daughter, and I think I know the answer to this. Do you have a favorite racing memory or moment?
That would be pretty easy. Well, I mean, Boston is really, I mean, that's a tough one when it comes to the whole idea of running Boston. But nothing beats the feeling you have of training with them At that point, she was still local, right? And taking some long runs, and then getting out in that course where you're going to be out there. In our case, it was around 4 hours or so, maybe a little bit after, 4:15s or something like that, I think. I can't remember anymore. But anyhow, that day in Columbus, I'll never forget it, 2015. And running with Devin and getting to that point where she was starting to doubt herself, and the same thing we all go through when we get to that point where we're at mile 19 and 20 and 21, and encouraging her, and and seeing the look of doubt on her face, and knowing that this is my daughter, and experiencing 4.5 hours of time, on a great course, Columbus. Damon does a great job with Columbus.
Love that course.
And in Columbus, I love Columbus, the Columbus Marathon. I love the start of it. I love the fireworks. And,
Born to Run, come around
they play
the corner.
AC/DC.
Yeah.
Every year, AC/DC.
It's my first full marathon.
And so getting to the point where now you're approaching the finish line. There's not a prouder dad moment than crossing the finish line of a marathon and, saying that you ran 26.2 miles with your daughters by your side.
That's awesome.
And we eventually did it 4 times together.
4 times. Reese, are you taking notes, getting Ariana ready for this moment? Maybe I can,
Columbus, and that's my first full marathon, so that would be nice, right?
hopefully I can coerce
Devin-
Cecilia
Your
to
daughter?
run, yeah.
Devin wasn't a runner. I mean,
Yeah, same as my daughter, she's
She was not. She took up. Well, this is the other thing too. Dads, moms too. And that is Devin took up running because of me.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the only reason she took up running, and then it kind of went from there.
Yeah, it's funny how life turns out, because you weren't a runner in high school, and here you are, and you've given so much to the running community, and you've been an established runner yourself, Boston Marathon, your daughter inspired her, so you just never know where life's going to take you, which is pretty cool.
One other quick funny story. It's a 2-second one. Is as far as the Columbus Marathon goes, in the first marathon we ran together, her first marathon is Father's Day, and I get a card, and it's from Devin, and it's an entry to the Columbus Marathon.
Oh, that's
And I said, Dad, I'm going to run a marathon, and I'm going to run it with you. I'm like, you're going to run it? I said, do you think you want to start with something a little shorter? At that point, she had run a half. She'd run a half. She'd never ran a 5K. All right. She said one day she wanted to run a half marathon. I said, you might want to start with a 5K first. And she
not
ran,
just
she
jump.
ran the Akron half, and then we ran Akron, Columbus, and Chicago twice. No, Chicago once. I was a bandit for 10 miles in Chicago.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, for her. So that's why I thought Chicago twice. That's a funny story. I went to Mark Goodell about that. Mark Goodell and Joey. I went to multiple people. I said, what about being a bandit in Chicago? And because that's a big marathon.
Yeah.
And depending on who you talk to. Jim Chain's very cautious. I think he was the one that said, I don't know if I do that, And then Mark Goodell's like, just go and do it. I've done it in all kinds of cities, And I think Joey was similar to that. So I thought, you know what? I'm getting more yeses than nos, So I thought, I'm going to be a bandit. I'm going to jump in at mile 16.
That was my question. You jumped in at 10, 16.
I wanted to get her through the last 10 miles. Yeah. Well, not 9 miles or so. And so this is true. So I jump in, no problems. And, I'm a bib. Lots of cops,
Yeah.
And I ran, but I'm just, and literally, and Devin's a nervous Willie, kind of like her dad. But so I get literally within the first mile, and a police officer, I'm not lying, a police officer says, "Hey, you, get off the course." I'm like, and I just kept running. I just kept running. Devin didn't hear it. It wasn't that loud. It wasn't like they yelled at the top of their lungs, And they just said, "Hey, you get off the course real quick," Now I'm freaking out. Devin didn't hear it. Because I think they must have been on this side. Devin was on this side. But now I'm in my brain going, okay, now what do I do? So I just kind of moved.
Yeah.
Every time I saw a police officer or something, and
It's not like he's going to chase you down. I mean,
I couldn't tell Devin. I couldn't tell Devin because that would freak her out.
Yeah.
And lose her whole mental.
Get inside her head, right? Yeah.
So it's funny too. Is towards the end, I had to get out at about 25 because then the crowds are massive, you know, and you're right in downtown Chicago. And so I said, well, you want to hear a funny story? I was going to tell her a story. He said, you know what you're at, you know how you're at 25. She said, no! You know? I said, I'm not going to tell you the story then. You know, and I jumped off the course. It wasn't easy getting off. I took a little too long.
I've never been in a race before. But it sounds fun. Just the
I'm not recommending it.
yeah,
No.
just
Pay your
just-
fees.
Just the risk
That was
factor.
more to help.
Yeah.
That was more to help her.
Right. It sounds like a blast though. Just the risk factor, you know.
I think on this date, since this is the day that we're recording this, I just want to recognize, because this again was all the community is about, for everybody that's out there, I want to recognize our dear Emily Gifford, who on this day, just 3 short years ago on 3/21 of 20, we lost a wonderful soul and the most infectious smile in the running community. And she was an ardent supporter of the Four Leaf Clover Run. So Emmy, we miss you, and the world isn't the same without you. And I know you're down there watching upon us. We miss you, Emmy.
Great big smile.
She ran the Four Leaf Clover Run every year with her kids in tow. She loved the Four Leaf Clover Run, you know, and we loved her right back. She gifted me at the end of one of the races a painting that her husband had done of a shirt. It was just an abstract kind of painting, but it was taken. The inspiration was taken from a shirt that Marianne, my sister Marianne, wore in a picture with me, right? And so he made a painting out of it. It was pretty awesome stuff.
Yeah, and it's great that you still have that. It's a great token to remember her by. Well, we've come to what's called a rapid fire roundup, Ed. So with the rapid fire roundup, Riza and myself, we just kind of come at you with questions, and you've got to answer first thought that pops into your mind, and it's got to be quick. All right? You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Riza, you're up first.
What are your go-to shoes?
Brooks.
Ghost or Adrenaline?
Ghost.
Okay. What is your favorite pre-race meal?
Coffee. Bagel is about. I mean, I'm not a breakfast person.
Music or no music?
Absolutely music training. Never music in a race. I'm
wow.
I'm soaking up the crowd. You know, to me, I'm feeding off the energy. Now, if you're running in a towpath marathon, you might be screwed, but or the Akron, which you went back to, but that's that
stretch.
5 mile stretch.
Right.
Do you have a top 3 running music that you like?
Top 3 running songs?
Oh man, top 3. Misery Loves Company is always the song that I like the most about running. Misery Loves Company is a Michael Stanley song.
Oh,
And I
okay.
thought, Misery Loves Company,
Yeah.
please come running with me.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Born to Run. I mean, who doesn't like hearing Born to Run on the
yeah.
course? Don't you hear it every marathon you
Yeah.
ever do? It really would just be my mix of music, which I'm not going to bore everybody with my mix. But it's good music, I can tell you that much.
Favorite Akron running spot?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Really tough one because there's so many great spots. I'll tell you quickly though, when I never experienced really trails, I was always been more of a road guy. First time I ever experienced the gorge, it kind of changed my whole mindset because the gorge is just, you can do everything in the gorge with be challenging as far as training goes. You know, but I think probably the valley offers everything, and it connects to everything. That's the key. I mean, I can run from my house practically. The other good thing about where I've always lived close to the towpath.
Favorite race?
Four Leaf Clover Run, and I've never run it. No, Boston Marathon, Akron Marathon. You know,
Longest distance?
I ran one ultra. One ultra. It's a day. A lot of people out there, if you're watching, probably know. If you know me, know Boots, my dog, right, and my lifesaver. But anyhow, I got Boots on December 1st of 2018, I think it was, and the next day was my first and only ultra. Maybe I'd actually like to. If there's one thing I'd like to do is, you can walk them, you can do whatever. Get into some of that aspect of things maybe. But anyhow, I ran the Regal Beagle. the next day, and I got a beagle. Boots is a beagle, you know. And we took Boots to the race, and she was the star of the show that day.
Ah, cool.
And I had a pretty solid performance at that. Actually, we got lucky with the weather for that one because it's usually crappy time of the year,
Yep.
like November, or December.
Yeah.
So, and we had good weather. I mean, it was a little cold, but it was sunny.
Yeah, did a 25K for that race way back.
Jennifer Douglas does a great job.
She does.
You know. And
You're up next. You got the
Do
next
you have
question.
a favorite sports movie?
wow, favorite man, where are you guys coming up with your favorite sports movie? Yikes, man, probably Brian's song.
Because it says a lot about you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The kind of movies, like we always ask people on the show, like, what's your favorite sports movie?
Brian's song. Do you
There's
guys-
people
do
who say
you know that- do you know that
Waterboy.
movie?
There's,
Now I have two movies
I love
to
Brian's
watch.
song. I love,
Brian's
yeah.
song is great.
Oh, it's a tearjerker.
I mean, I like,
Break out the tissues when you watch that one.
What's
yeah.
it with the blind with the big football player?
Oh yeah, it's like I've seen that too. Yeah.
Blindsided?
Blindside.
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 Blindside,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
I like a
that
lot
one.
of sports movies.
Yeah.
The silly football ones. I like Longest Yard.
That's classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Burt Reynolds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you're really going to like this one. Favorite lawn and garden tool? It is the lawn Wrangler, so.
You know what? Something funny about that is it's funny if you ask that question because Glendale Cemetery, which everybody's run through Glendale,
Oh, yeah.
not just for our race, you know, the home run for the homeless. A lot of races
Yes.
go through there, but all of the Sutter brothers were cut the lawn
Oh, yeah.
at Glendale Cemetery when we were
Really?
kids.
Wow.
Literally,
Wow.
we were like,
Dude, you were a lawn wrangler before you knew you were a lawn wrangler.
we were 14 years old, and we cut the lawn, and we made like $1.50 an
Mowing
hour,
that lawn.
you know,
Yeah.
and we all worked at Glendale Cemetery.
That is
to the
cool.
point where my mom said she wanted to be buried in there. We didn't bury her there. we buried her with our family, you know. But yeah, so I cut a lot of lawn.
That's a cool story.
Wow.
And you know what the funny thing is, I don't want to cut the lawn. We didn't use too many of this. You only use this when you go around the gravestones, you know. But you're a big time if you got to sit on the track.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you know, at that age.
Okay, for your last one, who is your favorite Wrangler?
Who's my favorite Wrangler? Yeah, I have two of them.
Right here.
They're right here.
Usually they say Riza
You know,
because she's prettier than me.
No, I only interviewed one though, Nicole. So
Ed, we give our guest every episode a custom-made Wrangler goodie bag, and you never know what you're going to find in that goodie bag.
in you know, I mean,
Spray
that's
paint,
what I love.
Sharpie.
Who comes up with all this stuff? You?
Oh, I don't know. It's just it's a group effort. Yeah, we just try
I
to
mean,
do
like
the
your
most
your
outrageous. Yeah, yeah.
Even your introduction to this.
I won't take any responsibility for that. It's a group effort.
You know,
But
you-
yeah, we enjoy just you know we give to our guests, and there's some special things in there for
am I
you.
supposed to
So
look at?
yeah, go ahead.
How did you know that Utz were my favorite potato chips?
Because you seem like a Utz guy. I thought that seems
What
I'm
like
is
serious.
no, because you
You
know
never
Ed.
had Utz potato chips?
Ed,
no. What about the?
I told my wife, I said, Ed Sutter, we're interviewing him. I said, he is such an old school guy. He's just like, he reminds me, no, he is. Just like a dude you grew up with in the neighborhood. And that's what Utz potato chips are, man.
I discovered
They've been
Utz-
around forever.
Yeah, they have been, but I haven't known about them forever. They're a Philadelphia brand, you know.
They are.
And I discovered them 5 years, 6 years ago, something like that. They're the best potato chips.
They are.
there
You can't eat just one. Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you get their Ripple ones,
Oh, I love those.
I will go through a bag. Oh man.
They're sinful, Ed.
They
Yeah.
also got the pretzels. I like those pretzel nut, you know, the big thick pretzels, and they're all chopped up.
Oh, yeah,
Bits and
yeah.
pieces.
Good stuff.
That's a healthy snack.
That's after a long run.
This isn't so healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots
after
of
a long
sodium.
run.
That's a long run of Eddie's cheesesteak.
Okay, yes.
Delicious, man. We had that for lunch when our PTA bought that, Ed.
Awesome.
Man, that was great. That's for you, Ed. That's my race shirt for you, buddy.
All right.
Yeah, I figured I'd trade shirts with you because
And here I
my
forgot
Four Leaf
it.
Clover shirt is at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean thanks to Frontier Airline.
Yeah.
I lost my luggage, and there's something else in there too. There's something else in there,
I
Ed.
saw a long run
At
of
the bottom, I told my daughter to put it. There we go. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, who do you get these from?
In China, Ed.
I might go. I get you a good price. I do these every year for the Four Leaf.
Do you?
Yes,
Then
it's
I
in my
then I may
refrigerator.
look into that. Yeah.
I
Slap.
have one in.
Who does your shirts?
A guy by the name of Mike Kane who owns Kane Sign Shops
yeah, over there
on
in
North
Glenwood.
Hill. Yeah, he's a
Glenwood.
North Hill guy, and I taught both of his daughters in high school, and yeah, so he
Keep it
does the
local.
shirts.
Keep it